Emily Wilson lived a quiet life in the leafy suburbs of Chicago, where the hum of lawnmowers and the chatter of neighborhood kids filled the air. At 35, she was a devoted mother to her 12-year-old son, Lucas, and wife to Jake, a 42-year-old sales manager with a fading charm. Their home, a modest two-story with a wraparound porch, was a testament to years of hard work and careful savings. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming. 15 years ago, Emily met Jake in a crowded lecture hall at Northwestern University. He was a senior, brimming with ambition and a contagious laugh that drew her in. She was a shy sophomore, captivated by his confidence. Their romance was a whirlwind, late-night coffee runs, stolen kisses under campus oaks, and promises of a shared future. By 23, Emily was married, and by 25, she was cradling newborn Lucas, her heart full. Jake, then a rising star in his firm, seemed like the perfect partner, driven, reliable, and fiercely protective. But time dulled the shine. Jake's long hours at work left Emily to manage the household alone. His once warm smiles turned curt, his attention drifting to his phone or the TV. Lucas, a bright and sensitive boy with his mother's hazel eyes, became the glue holding them together. He'd crack jokes to lighten tense dinners or sketch drawings for Emily when she looked weary. She adored him, but lately, Lucas seemed quieter, his gaze lingering on his parents' strained exchanges. The real shift came 2 years ago when Emily's father, Richard, passed away. A self-made man, he built a chain of cozy coffee shops across Chicago, earning a small fortune in real estate and investments. His death left Emily, his only child, a substantial inheritance, millions in cash, properties, and stocks. She saw it as a safety net for Lucas's future, college, travel, a chance to chase his dreams. Jake, however, saw dollar signs. We're set for life," Jake had exclaimed, flipping through car magazines at the kitchen table. His eyes gleamed as he pointed to his sleek red Porsche. "With your dad's money, we can finally live a little. Don't you want that?" Emily frowned, her fingers tightening around her coffee mug. "Jake, it's not about us. I want to save it for Lucas. And there are taxes, maintenance costs. We can't just blow it." Jake's jaw clenched, and he stormed out, muttering about her stinginess. From then on, Jake's demeanor soured. He'd nag Emily about selling her father's properties or cashing out stocks, his tone sharp and accusing. "You're sitting on a gold mine, but you make us live like we're broke," he'd snap. Emily tried to reason with him, explaining her plans to invest wisely, but their conversation spiraled into shouting matches. Lucas, overhearing from his room, would turn up his music to drown out the noise. Worse, Jake began roping Lucas into their disputes. "Hey, bud, don't you want a new gaming console?" he'd say, loud enough for Emily to hear. "Your mom's got the cash, but she's too cheap to share." Lucas would mumble something noncommittal, his eyes darting to Emily with a mix of guilt and unease. She chalked it up to his preteen phase, but a nagging worry grew. Was Jake turning their son against her? One chilly afternoon, Emily returned from grocery shopping to find the house in disarray. Drawers were yanked open, papers strewn across the floor, and the safe in her bedroom bore fresh scratches around the lock. Her heart raced. "Jake, we've been robbed," she called, rushing to the living room where he lounged on the couch. He barely glanced up from his phone. "What? No, you probably just left things messy." His nonchalance struck her like a slap. "Jake, the safe, someone tried to break in. You were home all morning. Didn't you hear anything?" His eyes flickered, and for a moment, she saw something guilt? Panic? "You're overreacting," he said, standing abruptly. "I've got stuff to do." He grabbed his keys and left, the door slamming behind him. Emily stood frozen, her mind racing. The safe held her father's stock certificates, property deeds, and emergency cash. Only she knew the combination, a fact that had frustrated Jake for months. As she tidied the chaos, a chilling thought took root. Jake wasn't just greedy. He was desperate. And desperate people were dangerous. That night, Lucas crept into the kitchen while Emily washed dishes. "Mom," he whispered, glancing at the door. "I heard Dad on the phone. He was talking about your money and how to get it. I don't know what he meant, but it sounded bad." Emily's hands stilled in the soapy water. She forced a smile, ruffling his hair. "Don't worry, sweetie. I'll handle it." But as Lucas nodded and slipped away, her stomach churned. The shadows in her home were growing darker, and she wasn't sure who she could trust. The Chicago suburbs were cloaked in the gray chill of early spring, but inside Emily Wilson's home, the air felt heavier, charged with unspoken suspicions. After discovering her ransacked bedroom and Jake's evasive reaction, Emily, now 35, couldn't shake the dread that her husband was plotting something sinister. The safe, scratched but unopened, held her father's legacy, millions in stocks, deeds, and cash meant for her son Lucas's future. Jake's obsession with that inheritance had grown palpable, his once charming demeanor replaced by a restless hunger. Emily tried to maintain normalcy for Lucas, her 12-year-old son, whose quiet intelligence and watchful eyes missed little. She'd catch him studying her and Jake, his sketchbook forgotten as he absorbed their tense silences. Since his whispered warning about Jake's phone call, Emily had begun locking her office door and double-checking her bank accounts. She even installed a small security camera in the hallway, disguised as a smoke detector, telling herself it was just precaution. But each creak of the house at night set her nerves on edge. Jake, meanwhile, doubled down on his charm offensive. I'm sorry about the other day," he said one morning, sliding a coffee across the kitchen counter. His smile was boyish, the one that once melted her heart. "Work's been brutal, and I took it out on you. Let's do something special for your birthday this weekend, yeah?" Emily nodded, wary but hopeful. Maybe she'd misjudged him. Maybe the mess was just a lapse, not a scheme. Lucas, however, wasn't convinced. At school, he'd started researching suspicious behavior on the library computer, his young mind piecing together clues. He noticed Jake's late-night texts, the way he'd linger near Emily's office, and the odd packages arriving at their doorstep, small, unmarked envelopes Jake whisked away before Emily could see. One evening, while Jake was at a client dinner, Lucas slipped into Emily's room. "Mom, I found something," he said, holding out a crumpled receipt from Jake's jacket. It was for a hardware store, listing a crowbar and gloves. "Why would Dad need this stuff?" Emily's throat tightened. "It's probably for work, sweetie," she lied, but her mind raced. "A crowbar? For the safe?" She hugged Lucas, promising to look into it, then tucked the receipt into her pocket. That night, she scoured Jake's browser history on their shared laptop, finding searches for how to open a safe without a key and fast cash for property sales. Her heart sank, but a flicker of anger sparked. If Jake thought he could outsmart her, he was wrong. The day before Emily's 36th birthday, Jake and Lucas surprised her with plans for a homemade dinner. "We're cooking your favorite, chicken curry," Jake announced, ruffling Lucas's hair. Lucas smiled, but his eyes darted to Emily, a silent signal. She'd taught him to trust his instincts, and now hers screamed that something was off. Jake's sudden warmth felt rehearsed, his jokes too loud. As he chopped vegetables, Emily noticed a small vial on the counter, unlabeled, filled with a fine white powder. "What's that?" she asked, keeping her tone light. Jake froze, then laughed. "Oh, just a new spice blend. Lucas found it at the store, right, bud?" Lucas nodded, but his fingers twitched, a telltale sign of nerves. Emily's pulse quickened. She excused herself to check emails and slipped into her office, where she reviewed the hallway camera footage. At 2 a.m. the previous night, Jake had crept into the kitchen, tucking that same vial into a drawer. Her stomach churned. Was it a spice, or something worse? Back in the kitchen, Emily played along, praising their efforts. But she swapped her plate with Jake's when he turned to grab water, a move so subtle even Lucas didn't notice. If there was something in the food, she wouldn't be the one to suffer. As they sat down, Jake raised a glass. "To Emily, the best wife and mom," he said, his grin wide but his eyes cold. Lucas barely touched his curry, pushing it around his plate. Emily took a bite, the flavors sharp and unfamiliar. Her tongue tingled, and a wave of dizziness hit. She gripped the table, her vision blurring. "You okay?" Jake asked, leaning forward. But his concern felt hollow, his gaze too intent. Lucas's chair scraped as he stood, his voice trembling. "Mom, don't eat it." Before Emily could respond, her throat tightened, and she slumped to the floor, gasping. Through the haze, she saw Jake hand Lucas a $20 bill, his voice low and smug. "Good job, kid. You earned it." Emily's world went black, her last thought a piercing betrayal. They're in this together. She awoke to the sterile beep of hospital monitors, her body weak but alive. Lucas sat beside her, his face streaked with tears. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he choked out. "I tried to warn you." Confusion swirled as Emily glanced at the next bed, where Jake lay unconscious, tubes snaking from his arms. A doctor entered, explaining that both had ingested a toxic substance, likely from the curry. Your son called 911 just in time, she added. Emily's eyes locked on Lucas, who clutched her hand. I didn't put it in, Mom. Dad did. I switched the vials. In that moment, Emily realized the truth. Lucas hadn't betrayed her. He'd been playing a dangerous game to protect her, outsmarting Jake at every turn. But how had Jake ended up poisoned? And what did this mean for their family? As Lucas began to explain, Emily felt a surge of resolve. Whatever Jake had planned, she'd make sure he faced the consequences legally, decisively, and without mercy. The hospital room was a sterile cocoon, its fluorescent lights casting stark shadows on Emily Wilson's pale face. At 35, she lay in a crisp bed, her body still weak from the poison that had nearly claimed her life. Beside her, 12-year-old Lucas gripped her hand, his tear-streaked face a mix of relief and guilt. Across the room, Jake, her 42-year-old husband, lay unconscious, his chest rising and falling under the hum of machines. The doctor's words echoed in Emily's mind. Both she and Jake had ingested a toxic substance, likely from the curry Lucas and Jake had prepared for her birthday. But it was Lucas's trembling confession that cut through the fog. I didn't do it, Mom. Dad wanted to hurt you. I switched the vials. Emily's heart pounded as she processed the revelation. Lucas, her quiet, perceptive son, had outmaneuvered Jake, replacing a deadly poison with a harmless spice. But the plan had backfired. Jake, somehow, had poisoned himself too. How? And why had Lucas played along with his father's scheme? As the suburban Chicago hospital buzzed around them, Emily knew one thing. The truth was her only weapon now. Lucas, his voice barely above a whisper, began to explain. A few weeks ago, I heard Dad on the phone, he said, glancing nervously at Jake's still form. He was talking to someone about getting the money after you were gone. I didn't know what to do, so I started watching him. Lucas had noticed Jake's late-night rummaging, the crowbar hidden in the garage, the small vial he'd tucked away in the kitchen. When Jake approached him with the special powder for Emily's curry, promising cash and a new gaming console, Lucas saw his chance. I pretended to go along with it, he said, his eyes pleading for forgiveness. But I swapped it for paprika. I thought it would just make the food spicy and you'd be okay. Emily squeezed his hand, her throat tight with pride and pain. You were so brave, Lucas, she whispered. But her mind raced. If Lucas hadn't used the poison, how had it ended up in the curry? She glanced at Jake, his face slack under the oxygen mask. The doctor had mentioned a cut on his thumb, a minor injury from chopping vegetables. Could the poison have entered his system through the wound? The thought was chilling, but it sparked a flicker of clarity. Jake, paranoid and distrustful, must have added the poison himself, ensuring Emily's dose was lethal. In his haste, he contaminated his own food, or his injury had betrayed him. As Lucas recounted more details, Emily's shock gave way to fury. Jake's greed had driven him to attempt murder, manipulating their son to do his bidding. She thought back to the ransacked bedroom, the scratched safe, Jake's relentless pressure to sell her father's properties. Her inheritance, millions in stocks, real estate, and cash from her late father's coffee shop empire, was the prize. Jake didn't just want a Porsche or a lavish vacation. He wanted it all, even if it meant erasing her. But Emily wasn't helpless. She'd spent years managing her father's investments, learning the intricacies of finance and law. If Jake thought he could outsmart her, he'd underestimated her resolve. Lucas, she said softly, did you keep anything from Dad's plan? Anything we can use? Lucas nodded, pulling out his phone. I recorded him, he admitted. When he told me to put the powder in your food, I hit record. I was scared, but I thought, maybe it would help. Emily's pulse quickened. Evidence? She asked Lucas to play the recording, keeping the volume low. Jake's voice crackled through the phone. Put this in your mom's curry, kid. Just a pinch. It'll make her sleep, and we'll get that money for your games. Deal. The casual malice in his tone made Emily's skin crawl. Lucas's voice, hesitant but compliant, followed. Okay, Dad. The recording was damning, a lifeline in the chaos. The hospital's stay stretched into the next day, with Emily regaining strength while Jake remained in a coma. Doctors warned he might wake soon, and Emily knew she had to act fast. She called her friend Sarah, a lawyer who specialized in family law, and shared the basics, omitting the recording for now. Sarah arrived within hours, her sharp eyes scanning the room. If what you're saying is true, we can build a case, she said. But we need more than Lucas's word. Do you have anything concrete? Emily hesitated, then handed over Lucas's phone. Sarah listened to the recording, her jaw tightening. "This is gold," she said. "But we need to secure it legally. Chain of custody, proper documentation. And we should check Jake's devices. If he's been researching poisons or safecracking, it'll strengthen our case." Emily nodded, her mind already mapping the next steps. She asked Sarah to retrieve Jake's laptop from their home, along with the vial from the kitchen, which Lucas had hidden in his room. While Sarah worked, Emily and Lucas dug deeper. Lucas revealed he'd seen Jake browsing a shady website on his phone, something about untraceable compounds. Emily, using her own laptop, accessed their shared cloud storage and found deleted files Jake hadn't fully erased, screenshots of a dark web marketplace, and a purchase confirmation for organic toxin. Her stomach churned, but she saved everything to a secure drive. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the wall she was building against Jake. As evening fell, a nurse informed Emily she'd be discharged soon. Jake, however, was stabilizing, his vitals improving. Panic flared. Once he woke, he'd spin a story, charm the police, maybe even turn Lucas against her again. But Emily pushed the fear down. She had Lucas, the recording, and a growing paper trail. "We're going to stop him," she told Lucas, her voice steady. "He won't hurt us again." Lucas looked up, his young face hardening with resolve. "I didn't want to lie to him, Mom, but I had to protect you." Emily hugged him tightly, tears prickling her eyes. Her son had faced a moral crucible and chosen loyalty over fear. Now, it was her turn to fight. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Emily felt a shift within her, a quiet strength forged in betrayal. Jake had underestimated them both, and that was his fatal mistake. The hospital's antiseptic scent clung to Emily Wilson as she stood in the dim light of Jake's room, her heart a tangle of resolve and rage. At 35, she'd survived her husband's attempt to poison her, a betrayal orchestrated under the guise of a birthday dinner. Her 12-year-old son, Lucas, had saved her, swapping Jake's deadly toxin for harmless paprika, only for Jake, now 42 and comatose, to inadvertently poison himself through a cut on his thumb. The Chicago suburbs outside hummed with normalcy, but inside, Emily was preparing for war. Armed with Lucas's secret recording and a trail of digital evidence, she was ready to ensure Jake faced justice, legally and irrevocably. Lucas sat by her side, his young face etched with worry but also a quiet strength. The recording on his phone, Jake's voice instructing him to spike Emily's curry with special powder for a cash reward, was a bombshell. Combined with screenshots of Jake's dark web purchases and searches for untraceable poisons, Emily had enough to bury him. Her friend Sarah, a sharp-witted family lawyer, was already mobilizing, securing the evidence and coordinating with a detective friend, Officer Martinez, who specialized in white-collar crimes with a darker edge. As Jake's condition stabilized, doctors predicted he'd wake within days. Emily knew time was short. If Jake regained consciousness, his charm and quick tongue could muddy the waters, casting doubt on Lucas's story or painting Emily as paranoid. She couldn't let that happen. With Sarah's guidance, Emily filed a police report from the hospital, detailing the poisoning attempt and providing the recording. Martinez, a no-nonsense officer with a knack for unraveling deceit, listened intently. "This is solid," he said, pocketing a copy of the audio. "But we need to search your home for the vial and check Jake's devices. Can you get us access?" Emily nodded, handing over her house keys. Sarah had already retrieved Jake's laptop and the hidden vial from Lucas's room, now safely stored in a locked briefcase. The vial, labeled only with a cryptic code, was sent for forensic analysis. Emily's mind raced as she recalled the moment she'd swapped plates with Jake during dinner, a gut-driven move that had saved her life. She hadn't known then that Lucas was already protecting her, but their unspoken alliance had outwitted Jake's scheme. Back at home, Martinez's team combed through the Wilson residence. They found the crowbar Lucas had mentioned, tucked behind the garage workbench, its tip scratched with paint matching the safe. Jake's phone, carelessly left on the nightstand, revealed a gold mine, text to an unknown contact about securing the funds, and a bookmarked link to a site selling organic compounds. The laptop yielded more, deleted emails confirming a $500 purchase of a substance later identified as a rare neurotoxin, absorbable through skin or ingestion. Emily shivered, realizing how close she'd come to death. Lucas, meanwhile, grappled with his role in the ordeal. "I lied to Dad," he confessed to Emily one night, his voice small. "I pretended to be on his side, but it felt wrong. What if I'd messed up?" Emily knelt before him, her hands on his shoulders. "You did what you had to Lucas. You saved us. I'm so proud of you." His eyes, so like her own, brimmed with tears, but he nodded. Emily saw her son's moral struggle, deceiving his father to protect her, and vowed to shield him from further pain. Sarah arranged for a restraining order against Jake, citing the poisoning attempt and his history of coercive behavior. Emily, drawing on her experience managing her father's estate, cataloged every piece of evidence: timestamps, screenshots, even the hardware store receipt for the crowbar. She also hired a private investigator to dig into Jake's recent activities, uncovering a secret bank account where he'd funneled small sums from their joint savings, likely to fund his dark web purchases or plan a getaway. The betrayal stung, but it fueled Emily's determination. When Jake finally woke, Emily was ready. She stood at his bedside, her expression cold as steel. Jake blinked, disoriented, his voice hoarse. "Em? What happened?" He tried to sit up, wincing as tubes tugged at his arms. Emily didn't flinch. "You tried to kill me, Jake," she said, her words deliberate. "You told Lucas to poison my food. But you slipped up, and now you're here." Jake's eyes widened, a flicker of panic betraying his attempt at confusion. "What? No, that's crazy. I'd never." "Save it," Emily cut in, holding up her phone. She played the recording, Jake's voice filling the room. "Put this in your mom's curry, kid. It'll make her sleep." His face paled, sweat beading on his forehead. "That's not." "I was joking," he stammered. Emily leaned closer, her voice low. "The police have your laptop, your texts, your purchase history. They know about the neurotoxin. You're done, Jake." Jake's bravado crumbled. He slumped back, muttering denials, but Emily saw the truth in his darting eyes. She handed him divorce papers, her signature bold on the final page. "Sign it," she said. "You'll never see Lucas or my money again." Jake's hand shook, but he scrawled his name, perhaps sensing the weight of the evidence against him. Emily turned away, her heart heavy but unyielding. She'd loved him once, but that man was gone. As she left the room, Martinez met her in the hallway. "We've got enough for an arrest," he said. "The lab confirmed the vial's contents match the toxin in your system. With the recording and digital trail, he's looking at attempted murder." Emily exhaled, relief mingling with sorrow. She glanced at Lucas, waiting nearby, his sketchbook clutched like a shield. "What happens now?" she asked. Martinez's jaw tightened. "He'll be detained once he's stable. You and your son are safe." Emily took Lucas's hand, feeling the weight of their victory and its cost. Jake's greed had shattered their family, but it had also forged an unbreakable bond between her and Lucas. As they stepped into the hospital's elevator, Emily felt a spark of hope. The fight wasn't over, but she was no longer the trusting wife who'd ignored the shadows. She was a mother, a survivor, and a woman ready to reclaim her life. The Chicago suburbs bloomed with the tentative green of spring, but for Emily Wilson, the season marked a rebirth of a different kind. At 35, she stood on the precipice of a new life, having survived her husband Jake's attempt to poison her for her inheritance. The hospital confrontation, where she'd forced Jake to face his recorded betrayal, had been a turning point. Now 42, Jake lay in custody, his charm no match for the evidence Emily and her 12-year-old son, Lucas, had meticulously gathered. As the legal system tightened its grip, Emily prepared to rebuild, determined to protect Lucas and honor the legacy her father had left. The weeks following Jake's arrest were a whirlwind. Officer Martinez, the detective handling the case, worked tirelessly with the prosecutor to build an airtight charge of attempted murder. The evidence was overwhelming. Lucas's recording of Jake instructing him to poison Emily's curry, the dark web purchase of a rare neurotoxin, the crowbar scratches on the safe, and text revealing Jake's plan to seize Emily's millions. Forensic analysis confirmed the vial from the kitchen contained the same toxin found in both Emily's and Jake's systems, Jake's accidental poisoning through a thumb wound sealing his guilt. Emily's foresight in swapping plates had saved her, while Lucas's courage in swapping the poison for paprika had exposed Jake's scheme. Emily, once a trusting wife, now channeled her grief into action. With her lawyer, Sarah, she finalized the divorce, ensuring Jake had no claim to her father's estate, millions in stocks, properties, and cash from his Chicago coffee shop empire. The restraining order kept Jake at a distance, and Emily moved swiftly to secure her finances, transferring assets to a trust for Lucas's future. She hired a cybersecurity expert to scrub any trace of Jake's access to their accounts, closing the door on his greed. Lucas, though, carried the weight of his role. "I keep thinking about Dad," he admitted one evening, sketching in their new apartment, a cozy, sunlit space they'd rented to escape the memories of their old home. "I lied to him, Mom. Even if he was bad, was that okay?" Emily sat beside him, her heart aching for her son's moral wrestle. "You protected us, Lucas," she said, brushing his hair back. "Sometimes, doing the right thing feels heavy, but you chose love over fear. That's what matters." Lucas nodded, his pencil moving again, sketching a phoenix rising from flames, a symbol of their shared resilience. The trial, held 3 months later, was swift but grueling. Jake, gone in an ill-fitting suit, pleaded not guilty, spinning a tale of a misunderstanding and claiming the toxin was a spice gone wrong. But the prosecutor dismantled his lies, playing the recording for a stunned courtroom. Lucas, excused from testifying due to his age, waited with Emily in a side room, his hand in hers. When the verdict came guilty on all counts, Emily exhaled, tears mingling with relief. Jake was sentenced to 7 years in prison, with a $1.5 million restitution order and $4,000 monthly child support for Lucas. His dreams of luxury, a red Porsche, lavish trips, crumbled into a cell-stark reality. The aftermath brought unexpected ripples. Jake's parents, who'd once doted on Lucas, severed contact, blaming Emily for ruining their son. She shielded Lucas from their vitriol, enrolling him in therapy to process the loss. Emily, too, sought counseling, grappling with the betrayal of a man she loved for 15 years. "I trusted him," she told her therapist, "but I won't let that define me." Each session peeled back layers of guilt, revealing a core of strength she hadn't known she possessed. With Jake gone, Emily and Lucas forged a new path. They settled into their apartment, its walls adorned with Lucas's sketches and photos of their hikes in nearby forest preserves. Emily used a portion of her inheritance to open a small coffee shop, Richard's Brew, named for her father. Its warm wood tones and aroma of fresh espresso drew locals, and Emily found joy in the daily rhythm of steaming milk and chatting with customers. Lucas, thriving in a new school, joined a coding club, his eyes lighting up as he built his first game. "It's about a hero who saves his family," he told Emily, his smile a balm to her heart. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Emily and Lucas sat on their balcony, sipping hot cocoa. The city's distant lights twinkled, a reminder of the world beyond their struggles. "Mom, do you think we'll be okay?" Lucas asked, his voice soft but steady. Emily looked at him, seeing not just her son but a partner in their survival. "We already are, Lucas," she said, squeezing his hand. "We faced the worst and came out stronger. That's our victory." Reflecting on her journey, Emily realized the true cost of Jake's greed wasn't just their marriage but her own self-doubt. She'd once feared she'd failed as a wife, a mother. Now, she saw her resilience, the way she'd gathered evidence, trusted Lucas's instincts, and stood firm in court. Her father's wealth, once a burden that drew Jake's malice, became a tool for good, funding Lucas's dreams, supporting their shop, and anchoring their future. Emily no longer wished the inheritance away. It was hers to wield, a legacy of love, not loss. As stars emerged above, Emily felt a quiet peace. Jake's punishment was just, his life narrowed to a prison's confines while hers expanded with possibility. She and Lucas were a team, their bond forged in fire. "To new beginnings," she toasted, raising her mug. Lucas clinked his against hers, his grin wide. "To us," he said. And in that moment, Emily knew, the shadows were gone, and their light would only grow.